Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Your Mark on the World show. I'm your host, Devin Thorpe. I'm a Forbes contributor covering social entrepreneurship and impact investing. And today we're fortunate to have with us a real player in the impact investment space, Rob Kaplan, who is the co-founder and managing director of the Closed Loop Fund, which recently closed its first 3 deals. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Devin. It's great to chat with you today.
Well, we're excited to learn more. Tell us about these 3 deals that you just did.
Yeah, we're super excited about these deals. It's a project we've been working on for over a year now, and it's now finally from concept to reality. The 3 deals combined, including our co-investors, are about $24 million for recycling infrastructure in this country. There's 2 deals focused on helping cities and consumers and residents recycle more conveniently and easily to increase the amount of recycling they can do. And then we also have a really exciting deal on building markets for hard to recycle plastics.
Excellent. What geography were the 3 deals?
So the collection deals are right in the heart of the country. Portage County, Ohio, and Quad Cities, Iowa. 2 areas that a lot of folks wonder whether recycling can work, and we're investing pretty seriously there. And then the 3rd deal is in a facility in Baltimore that will service a 500-mile radius across the entire East Coast.
Wow. And what kind of recycling will go on at the Baltimore facility?
In most recycling programs today, you can recycle a water bottle or a laundry detergent bottle, and there are pretty well-defined markets for those materials. But everything else, whether it's got a 3 or a 5 on the bottom of it, or is what we would call a bulky rigid, like a trash can or a swimming pool, there's not really a clear market for it. This facility will be able to now buy those materials from recycling facilities and communities up and down the East Coast. Today, that stuff gets landfilled or exported.
That's terrific. That's terrific. Well, I'm really excited to have you on the show because you called my attention to an article in the New York Times this past weekend that really was pretty shocking, really, to me. Yeah. The piece was written by is it John Trainer?
It's close enough for me.
Tierney, excuse me, John Tierney. Anyway, and he's echoing an article that he wrote that was similarly negative on recycling almost 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And my sort of eco-friendly conscience said, "What? What's your take on this piece? Are his conclusions that recycling is essentially a waste? Are those conclusions well-founded?"
Yeah, Devin, this week has been a strange one. It definitely felt like I was in a time warp to the early 90s when suddenly you actually see someone trying to argue that landfilling is better than recycling. The reality is that the numbers don't lie. Right now, cities are spending $5 billion a year to landfill. And that's because it's always in their best interest to recycle, because if they're going to landfill, they're going to have to pay someone. And if you're recycling, you don't have to pay. So it's always in the financial best interest of the city not to pay that landfill. On the flip side, the recycling industry generates over $200 billion a year in business. So clearly there's economic value. And that's really where part of the Closed Loop Fund came from. Before I joined the fund, I was working at Walmart, the world's largest retailer, on their environmental sustainability team. And at Walmart, we used to spend hundreds of millions of dollars landfilling our waste. And suddenly, over a period of time, we said, let's try and figure this out. We turned that $100 million or hundreds million dollar cost center into a profit center. And now the company makes hundreds of millions of dollars a year on recycling and their waste stream. And it's not rocket science. Cities around the country can do that too.
Well, that is inspiring. And of course, very encouraging. All the municipalities watching the show today, they're going to say, okay, sign me up. Yeah. But what about the arguments that Tierney makes that the that there isn't a real environmental benefit to recycling. That's the shocking part of his argument.
Yeah. And to be honest, I can't follow his math on it. We've tried to recreate it. As we've looked at it, and I'll walk through the math. I'm actually going to post a blog a little bit later today where I'll walk through all of the numbers. But essentially, if you take all of the plastic bottles that currently get landfilled and you recycle those, and you use the EPA's estimates, which are pretty much the most rigorous and publicly available ways to calculate the GHG impact, you're talking about reducing the greenhouse gas footprint of America by 30 million metric tons. And I know that that's like you can't feel it, you can't see it, so make it tangible, right? That's the equivalent of taking 6 million cars off the road for a year. That's more cars than are registered in the county of Los Angeles. So there's clearly an environmental benefit here, even if that's half wrong or half right, whichever glass you want to look at it, it's an environmental impact. Take that number, but then think about the future, right? We're talking about a future where billions of people in China and India want to and will start consuming and wasting at the same rate that Americans do. There's just not enough resources on this planet to sustain that. We need to close the loop on these materials so that it's more efficient and that we can meet this growing demand.
Yeah, no sense taking more oil out of the ground to make plastic when we can take plastic out of the landfill and or keep it out of the landfill and use it that way, right?
Absolutely. And if you're a consumer brand company, you know that too. You'd much rather re-refine plastic than ship petroleum from around the world into your supply chain. It's less volatile and it's increasingly secure. So it's a strong investment. That's why the closed loop funds investors are companies like Walmart and Coke and Pepsi and Procter and Unilever. These are companies that Colgate, Keurig Green Mountain, that are looking at the future of their supply chains and saying we need to have more robust domestic supply chains.
Well, it really seems like recycling continues to hit on all cylinders, and I guess Tierney's motivation, or the Times motivation, I guess, is irrelevant to our discussion today. But I know for myself, when I take a position, I tend to marry that position for good or ill. And John took a position 20 years ago that recycling was dumb. Yeah. And I guess he feels a need to defend that position. But I think most of us find that to be somewhat sketchy just right on our first glance. So I appreciate you taking the time to help us think through some of the math and the issues that he covered. Listen, Rob, I warned you that there were hazards dealing with a low IQ host. Rob, help us think through today a little bit about yourself. You are clearly becoming a role model. Your experience at Walmart, your experience running this fund, the impact you're having in the world, clearly people look up to you as a thought leader, as a guide, as a role model. Who do you look up to as a role model?
That's a great question. My role models have always been pretty much people I've worked with who have sort of common themes around them. When you're doing this kind of work and you're trying to make the case for the cause or the issue or the business that you believe in, you have to have a core of optimism. And for me, you know, I come from a Northeastern Jewish household where cynicism is pretty much like the only currency that exists within the family. And it's been a strong struggle for me, but I think back to, you know, my leadership when I was working at a company called Brown-Forman. They make Jack Daniels. And we were trying to figure out how would you make Jack Daniels drinkers choose to not drive drunk? How would you make them to choose to drink responsibly? And you have to really believe that you can do it. And I remember my bosses, the marketing leadership there really investing a lot in me and teaching me about how to take that approach.
Interesting. Now, you are clearly a very capable individual, and you could be doing any number of things. Why have you chosen to make recycling your focus?
It's a good question. Recycling was never really my top topic to work on. When I first started out my career, I actually started in politics, and I thought I was going to be in political communication. That was actually what my undergrad was. And I started working on a campaign around child safety seats. And suddenly I was advocating on programs and opportunities to save people's lives, save children's lives, instead of the newest computer wire or the newest level of technology. And I got so much more passion and personal intrinsic value out of doing that kind of work that I realized I was ruined and I could never go back. When I was at Walmart, it's a unique place. I would argue one of the coolest and best sustainability jobs you could get. When the Closed Loop Fund started standing up, I found it to be this incredible opportunity that combines the financial business case and the environmental impact into a single program. And it brings in public and it brings in private, and it just sort of hits on a variety of these issues that I think this model will apply to recycling and will help recycling, but I think we can apply it to all sorts of opportunities around the world where every time you make an action, you can deliver a sustainability benefit and a financial return. That's really what gets me excited.
That is an exciting premise for the 21st century. Really, we see the potential to see the 21st century wrap up on a very different note than it started. And in no small part because of corporations and investors deploying capital to change the world. That's a very, very encouraging premise. So I appreciate you sharing that. Now, Rob, I wonder if you would share with us one tip. You've been successful. You're a genius. You've been patient with me. You're a good guy. Help us think through something that you do every day, something that's a habit, something that you do regularly, consistently, that we might call an impact hack, something that we can replicate in our own lives, activities, careers, to have more impact, do more good. I'm a big kind of productivity guy, so I spend a lot of time like reading Lifehacker and thinking about what I could do to be more productive. And when you're working on these types of things, and you want to be as productive as possible, because the more productive you are, the more intrinsic value you get. I mean, certainly this idea of aligning your values and your mission with your work is incredibly valuable. But I think what I've started to be very excited about as a habit in the last 6 months or so, and especially since I joined the fund, is writing. Every day I take a moment, and I found this on Lifehacker, but there's a book, it's called Some Lines a Day. It's essentially a journal, but you only have to write 5 lines, 3 to 5 lines a day. And that really got me started on saying, okay, I'm just going to commit to 3 to 5. And then I started building on that base of success and being able to say, well, now I can write a couple paragraphs. I can go beyond a tweet, right? And now I can write. And that practice of writing has gotten me a lot clearer on what I'm trying to do, has helped me articulate what I'm trying to do and how to do it with my peers and my stakeholders and my colleagues. Well, as a writer, I really value that suggestion, so I appreciate you sharing that. That's great. We're running out of time here, Rob, and we're so grateful that you take the time to be with us. But before you go, I want you to just take a minute and tell people how they can learn more about the Closed Loop Fund, what you're doing, and how they can connect with you.
Yeah, so you can always find Closed Loop Fund at our website, closedloopfund.com. I'm on Twitter at ROBBYK, Robbie K, and at Loop Fund is our fund's Twitter handle. Later today, or maybe tomorrow, we'll be posting actually a red line version of John's article where we pull out and find detailed sources on each of the inaccuracies that we found in that article. So I think it'll be a great follow-up to this conversation. If folks want to learn a little bit more about the math and the science behind this, that'll be a great resource for folks.
Great. So how can they find that article? Walk us through how they can find your piece.
Yeah, sure. It'll be posted on closedloopfund.com or my Medium page for @RobbieK.
Fantastic. Listen, we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today and wish you every success in the great work that you're doing.
Thank you, Devin. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I'm a big fan of the platform you've built here. It's very exciting.
Thank you. You're very kind. Let's do some good.